I spent 40 years as a civil engineer, carefully saving every dollar for my dream retirement home, a $2 million villa overlooking Monterey Bay. After decades of sacrifice, I finally had my sanctuary. But when my late daughter's husband called, demanding to bring 15 people for a 3-week invasion of my home, I realized some family members see generosity as weakness. He was about to learn that this old engineer had built more than just bridges. I'd built an unbreakable defense system. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. The morning sun painted Monterey Bay in shades of gold and turquoise as Dennis Collins settled into his favorite deck chair, steam rising from his coffee mug like incense in a temple of earned peace. 40 years of engineering work had led to this moment, this view, this tranquility, this $2 million sanctuary perched on California's most beautiful coastline. The villa's floor-to-ceiling windows reflected his careful planning, each architectural detail chosen with the precision that had built bridges and highways across 3 states. At 62, Dennis had learned to savor these quiet mornings. The Italian marble countertops still gleamed with newness. The imported Portuguese limestone deck felt solid beneath his feet, and the infinity pool seemed to merge seamlessly with the Pacific horizon. This wasn't just a house, it was validation of a lifetime spent building other people's dreams, while carefully nurturing his own. Sarah's absence still ached in quiet moments like these. 5 years since cancer took his daughter, but her gentle spirit lingered in every carefully chosen detail of this home. She would have loved the morning light streaming through the kitchen, would have insisted on planting roses along the garden wall. Dennis touched the security system panel beside his chair, remembering her practical nature. "Dad, you're too trusting," she'd often said. "Not everyone has your integrity." The phone's shrill ring shattered his meditation like glass hitting concrete. Marcus Murphy's name appeared on the caller ID, and Dennis hesitated. His late daughter's husband had a talent for transforming peaceful moments into financial emergencies. 8 years of temporary assistance had taught Dennis to approach these conversations with engineering caution, measure twice, cut once. "Dennis, we're coming down for a family reunion," Marcus announced, without preamble, his voice carrying that familiar tone of casual entitlement. "There'll be 15 of us. We need you to prepare the master bedroom guest room's food for 3 weeks. We're already on the road." Dennis set his coffee down carefully, watching the liquid ripple like a seismic reading. "Marcus, wait. You can't just announce. Come on, old man. Family helps family, right? You taught me that." Marcus's voice carried the smooth manipulation of someone accustomed to getting his way. "Sarah always said you were the most generous father alive. Don't disappoint her memory." The words hit like a calculated punch. Using Sarah's memory as leverage was a new low even for Marcus. Dennis felt his engineering mind shift into problem-solving mode, analyzing structural weaknesses in Marcus's approach. Assumption without consultation, demands without discussion, emotional manipulation without shame. "Marcus, this is my home. I decide who visits and when." "Your home," Marcus laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. "After everything this family's been through. After all, the support we've given you through your grief. Don't be selfish, Dennis. We're already packed, already driving. Jessica's been planning this for weeks." Dennis stood slowly, his reflection multiplying in the villa's polished surfaces. 40 years of careful planning, systematic saving, delayed gratification, all so Marcus could treat his sanctuary like a free resort. The engineering precision that had built his career now focused on a different kind of structural problem, how to reinforce boundaries that had been systematically eroded. "No, Marcus, this won't work. Don't come." The silence stretched across the connection like a suspension cable under stress. When Marcus spoke again, his voice had lost its casual confidence. "What did you say?" I said no. "This is my home, purchased with my money, designed for my peace. You don't get to commandeer it for your convenience." "Listen, you ungrateful." Marcus's mask slipped completely. "After everything I've done for this family, after keeping Sarah's memory alive, this is how you repay me." Dennis walked to his study, pulling out a thick folder labeled Family Financial History. 8 years of documentation stared back at him, bank transfers, loan requests, broken promises to repay. His engineering habits had created an evidence trail Marcus had forgotten existed. "I think we're done here, Marcus. Don't come to my property. We'll see about that, old man. We'll just see." The line went dead, but Dennis felt more alive than he had in years. He moved to his security system control panel, fingers steady as he activated perimeter locks, camera recording, and motion detection. The villa transformed from open sanctuary to protected fortress with the touch of a few buttons. Through his windows, the Pacific stretched endlessly blue, indifferent to human drama. But Dennis was no longer indifferent to his own protection. Sarah's voice echoed in his memory, not Marcus's twisted version, but her real wisdom. Dad, you're too trusting. Not everyone has your integrity. Time to prove she'd raised a man capable of learning. The convoy appeared through Dennis's security cameras like a military invasion force, 4 vehicles winding up the private coastal road toward his villa. Marcus's black SUV led the procession, followed by 2 sedans and a pickup truck loaded with coolers, beach equipment, and enough luggage for a month-long occupation. Dennis counted heads through the high-definition monitors, 15 people, just as threatened. But this time they would find a fortress instead of a victim. The vehicles pulled up to Dennis's main gate and stopped abruptly. Through the camera audio, Dennis heard Marcus's voice rise in confusion and anger. What the hell? When did he install these gates? The wrought iron barriers stood 8 feet tall, electronically controlled with private property, no trespassing signs mounted at eye level. Security cameras tracked the convoy's movement, while motion sensors logged every approach. Dennis watched from his study as Marcus climbed out of his SUV designer sunglasses, reflecting his growing frustration. Dennis, Marcus shouted toward the villa, his voice carrying across the landscaped grounds. Open these gates right now. We drove 4 hours to get here. Dennis remained seated, coffee still warm in his hands, watching his security system work exactly as engineered. 40 years of building infrastructure had taught him that the best defenses were built before attacks began, not during them. A figure appeared at the fence line, Frank Rodriguez, his next-door neighbor, emerging from his morning garden work with the casual authority of someone accustomed to handling difficult situations. At 64, Frank moved with the measured confidence Dennis had noticed, but never understood until now. "Excuse me," Frank called to Marcus, his voice carrying professional calm. "I'm Frank Rodriguez, neighborhood security coordinator. Is there a problem here?" Marcus spun toward the interruption, his entitled frustration seeking a new target. "This is family business, old man. My father-in-law is having some kind of breakdown. He's locked us out of his own house." Frank stepped closer to the gate, and Dennis noticed something he'd missed in casual neighborly conversations, the way Frank assessed the situation, with systematic precision, eyes cataloging faces, license plates, and behavior patterns. "What's your relationship to the property owner?" "I'm his son-in-law. We're here for a family reunion," he planned. Frank's tone sharpened with professional skepticism. "Because Mr. Collins mentioned yesterday that he was looking forward to a quiet weekend. Didn't mention expecting 15 guests." Dennis felt a surge of gratitude. Frank had been listening, observing, understanding more than Dennis realized. Through his security intercom, Dennis could speak to both men without leaving his protected position. "Frank, thank you for checking on the situation," Dennis's voice carried clearly through the gate speaker. "Marcus, you and your group need to leave my property immediately." See, Marcus gestured wildly toward the speaker. "He's lost his mind." "Family doesn't lock out family." Frank pulled out his cell phone with practiced efficiency. "Sir, I'm a retired police detective. 30 years with Monterey County Sheriff's Department. What I see here is 15 people attempting to access private property without the owner's consent. That's called trespassing." The words hit Marcus like cold water. His cocky demeanor faltered as he realized his family manipulation tactics wouldn't work against professional law enforcement experience. "Wait, you don't understand. I understand perfectly." Frank was already dialing. "Dennis, do you want these individuals removed from your property?" "Yes, immediately." Frank spoke into his phone with the crisp efficiency of someone who'd made thousands of similar calls. "This is Frank Rodriguez, retired Detective 247. I need units for a trespassing complaint at 1247 Ocean View Drive. Property owner has requested removal of approximately 15 individuals who refuse to leave when asked. No immediate violence, but subjects are becoming agitated." Dennis watched through his cameras as the reality of legal consequences penetrated Marcus's entitled bubble. Several people in the convoy were already asking questions, sensing that their promised vacation was becoming a legal liability. "This is insane," Marcus pounded on the gate with his fists. "Dennis, you're destroying this family. Sarah would be ashamed of what you've become." Frank ended his call and stepped closer to the gate, his retired detective instincts fully engaged. "Sir, you need to step back from the property line. Threatening behavior toward the homeowner while trespassing is a serious escalation." Through the intercom, Dennis's voice remained steady, strengthened by Frank's professional support. "Marcus, you have 5 minutes to leave before the police arrive. Use them wisely." The convoy began showing signs of fracture. A woman Dennis didn't recognize was arguing with someone about not signing up for this drama. Two men were already walking back toward their sedan, clearly wanting distance from potential legal trouble. Marcus made one final attempt at manipulation, his voice cracking with desperate authority. "Dennis, if you don't open these gates right now, you'll never see this family again." That Dennis replied through the speaker sounds like a promise rather than a threat. The sound of sirens began echoing across Monterey Bay, growing stronger with each second. Frank nodded toward the approaching sound with satisfaction. Monterey County Sheriff's Department. Response time is excellent in this neighborhood. Dennis felt something he hadn't experienced in 8 years of Marcus's manipulation, complete confidence in his position. The engineering approach had worked. Identify the problem, design the solution, implement with precision. His fortress held. His ally provided professional backup. His boundaries were about to receive official legal validation. Marcus stood frozen at the gate as the sirens grew louder, finally understanding that his assumptions about Dennis's weakness had been catastrophically wrong. 2 Monterey County Sheriff's patrol cars swept up the coastal road with professional precision, their red and blue lights painting the morning scene in official authority. Dennis watched through his security monitors as the officers parked strategically, one vehicle blocking the convoy's exit route, the other positioned for optimal observation of all parties involved. Deputy Sarah Chen emerged from the lead car, her movements carrying the calm confidence of someone accustomed to resolving property disputes. Behind her, Deputy Martinez consulted his tablet, already documenting the scene with systematic thoroughness. Frank Rodriguez approached the officers with the easy familiarity of professional recognition. Frank Rodriguez, retired Detective 247. He introduced himself, badge wallet, appearing in his hand with practiced efficiency. Property owner is Dennis Collins inside the residence. 15 individuals arrived without permission, refused to leave when asked. Deputy Chen nodded, scanning the convoy with professional assessment. "Mr. Collins, can you hear me through your intercom system?" "Yes, officer. Thank you for responding so quickly. Sir, I need to verify your identity and property ownership. Can you meet us at your front door with documentation?" Dennis felt a moment of satisfaction as he gathered his prepared materials, property deed, driver's license, and the thick folder labeled Family Financial History that his engineering habits had compelled him to maintain. Walking to his front door, he appreciated the solid weight of legal documentation in his hand. The villa's front entrance opened onto a covered portico, allowing Dennis to remain on his property while speaking with the officers. Deputy Chen examined his identification and deed with professional thoroughness, her training evident in the systematic way she verified each detail. "Property ownership is confirmed," she announced, her voice carrying across the driveway. "Mr. Collins, do you know these individuals? The man in the black SUV is Marcus Murphy, my late daughter's husband. I don't recognize most of the others. They arrived demanding to stay in my home for 3 weeks without any prior arrangement or invitation." Marcus stepped forward, his earlier confidence replaced by nervous energy as he faced official law enforcement. "Officer, this is a family misunderstanding. Dennis is my father-in-law. We've been planning this reunion for weeks." Deputy Martinez looked up from his documentation. "Sir, do you have any written communication showing this was a planned visit with the property owner's consent?" The question hit Marcus like a legal trap he hadn't seen coming. His mouth opened and closed as he searched for an answer that didn't exist. "Well, no, but family doesn't need written invitations." "Actually, sir, family relationship doesn't override property rights," Deputy Chen interrupted. "The homeowner has absolute authority over who enters his property, regardless of family connections." Dennis felt a surge of validation. After 8 years of Marcus treating his generosity as obligation, official authority was confirming what Dennis had always known but been too polite to enforce his property, his rules. Frank provided additional context with the precision of his law enforcement background. "I observed the subjects arrive without invitation, demand entry, and refused to leave when asked. Mr. Collins activated his security system and requested police assistance, rather than escalate the situation personally." Deputy Martinez was photographing license plates and documenting faces. "How many individuals are we talking about?" Dennis consulted his security footage. 15 people in 4 vehicles. Most appear to be strangers to me. Several members of Marcus's group were already showing signs of wanting distance from the legal complications. A middle-aged couple had returned to their sedan, and were having what appeared to be an urgent discussion about departure timing. Officer Marcus tried again, his voice carrying a note of desperation. "This is really just a family communication issue. Dennis has been under stress since moving, and I think he's overreacting." Sir Deputy Chen's tone carried professional finality. The property owner has clearly stated that you don't have permission to be here. That makes this a trespassing situation, not a family dispute. Dennis produced his prepared folder, feeling the satisfaction of systematic preparation meeting official process. Officer, I have documentation showing a pattern of financial demands and manipulation spanning 8 years. This isn't an isolated incident. Deputy Chen accepted the folder with interest. Mr. Collins, while family financial disputes are typically civil matters, the trespassing and harassment aspects fall under criminal law. Are you requesting that these individuals be removed from your property? Yes, immediately. And do you wish to pursue trespassing charges? Dennis looked at Marcus, seeing not the grieving widower who had manipulated his guilt for years, but a middle-aged man who had built his lifestyle on someone else's generosity and was now facing consequences for the first time. Yes, I do. Deputy Martinez began the formal citation process, while Deputy Chen addressed the group. You have 10 minutes to vacate this property. Anyone remaining after that time will be arrested for criminal trespassing. The convoy erupted in urgent activity as reality penetrated the vacation fantasy. Car doors slammed, coolers were hastily loaded, and several people Dennis had never met disappeared entirely, rather than risk legal involvement. Marcus made one final attempt at emotional manipulation. Dennis, you're destroying our family. Sarah would never forgive you for this. But Dennis had Frank's professional support, official legal validation, and 8 years of systematic documentation. For the first time in their relationship, Marcus's manipulation tactics were powerless against proper preparation and legal authority. Officer Chen, Dennis said, pulling out his phone, I'd like to contact my attorney about pursuing additional legal remedies. This trespassing incident is part of a larger pattern of harassment and financial exploitation. Deputy Chen nodded approvingly. That's exactly what I'd recommend, Mr. Collins. You've handled this situation very professionally. Dennis scrolled to Patricia Williams's contact information, his estate planning attorney who had helped structure his villa purchase. Time to transform from defensive property owner to offensive legal plaintiff. Patricia Williams's downtown Monterey law office occupied the corner of a restored Victorian building, its polished hardwood floors and floor-to-ceiling legal libraries, projecting the authority Dennis needed. At 48, Patricia had built her estate planning practice on meticulous attention to detail and an intuitive understanding of family dynamics that could turn toxic. Dennis, I've reviewed the police report from this morning, Patricia said, settling behind her mahogany desk with the systematic precision of someone accustomed to building legal cases from complex family situations. Trespassing charges are just the beginning. What you've brought me suggests something much more serious. Dennis spread his family financial history folder across the conference table, 8 years of documentation arranged in chronological order with engineering precision. Bank statements, transfer receipts, email requests for emergency assistance, and Marcus's repeated promises to repay when business stabilizes, all meticulously preserved and organized. Patricia's eyebrows rose as she began calculating totals. Dennis, these transfer amounts are substantial. Walk me through the pattern. It started 6 months after Sarah died. Dennis began, his voice steady despite the emotional weight of the timeline. Marcus claimed his consulting business was struggling. Asked for $18,000 to avoid bankruptcy. Said it was temporary, promised to repay within 6 months. Patricia made notes on her legal pad, her pen moving with practiced efficiency. But repayment never occurred. Never. Instead, 6 months later, another crisis. His car needed major repairs, $8,000. Then Jessica needed dental work not covered by insurance. Then their apartment lease required a larger security deposit. Dennis pulled out a summary spreadsheet he'd prepared with engineering thoroughness. Each request came with detailed explanations, emotional appeals, and promises of future repayment. And the amounts escalated over time, Dennis nodded grimly. The largest single transfer was $45,000 for Marcus's MBA program. He said advanced education would secure his financial future, enable him to support the family properly, honor Sarah's memory through professional success. Patricia whistled softly, using your grief over Sarah as leverage for educational funding. That's particularly manipulative. She continued reviewing the documentation, her legal mind cataloging evidence with systematic precision. What's your total calculation? $280,350 over 8 years. The number still shocked Dennis even after multiple reviews. Enough to buy a house in most American cities. Enough to secure comfortable retirement without financial anxiety. Dennis, this level of systematic exploitation meets the legal definition of elder financial abuse under California law. Patricia's voice carried professional excitement mixed with genuine outrage. Most family financial disputes lack any documentation. You've built a fortress of evidence. She pulled out a thick legal reference book, flipping to sections marked with colored tabs. California Welfare and Institutions Code 15,610.3 specifically addresses financial abuse of elders. Your documentation shows a clear pattern of taking advantage of your grief and generosity for Marcus's personal benefit. Dennis felt something he hadn't experienced in years, complete professional validation of his systematic approach. What are our legal options? Comprehensive, Patricia replied, her strategic mind already building the case structure. Immediate restraining order to prevent further harassment. Civil lawsuit for restitution of the fraudulent transfers. Possible criminal referral for elder abuse. Asset investigation to determine Marcus's ability to repay. She began pulling forms from her filing system with practiced efficiency. California law allows us to freeze Marcus's assets pending resolution of elder abuse claims. His house, cars, bank accounts, everything becomes potential restitution sources. Dennis watched Patricia work, appreciating the systematic legal approach that mirrored his engineering methodology. Identify the problem, analyze the evidence, design the solution, implement with precision. How strong is our case realistically? Patricia smiled with the confidence of someone who had built a career on thorough preparation. Dennis, in 20 years of family law practice, I've never seen documentation this comprehensive. Marcus exploited your grief, systematically used emotional manipulation to extract nearly $300,000, and then attempted to invade your property when you finally established boundaries. She was already drafting legal documents, her fingers flying across the keyboard with professional certainty. Restraining order, first 500-yard minimum distance from you and your property. Then civil lawsuit for full restitution plus damages. California courts take elder financial abuse very seriously. What about the criminal aspects? I'll refer everything to the district attorney's office. Your documentation provides probable cause for fraud charges, elder abuse, prosecution, and potentially conspiracy, if we can prove Jessica's involvement in the financial manipulation. Dennis felt the satisfaction of systematic preparation meeting professional expertise. 40 years of engineering habits had created the evidence trail that would hold Marcus accountable for nearly a decade of exploitation. How quickly can this move forward? Patricia consulted her calendar, already scheduling the legal offensive. Restraining order hearing tomorrow morning. I'll file the civil lawsuit simultaneously. Asset freeze within 48 hours if the judge agrees with our elder abuse evidence. She gathered the completed forms into a comprehensive legal package. Dennis Marcus thinks he's dealing with a generous old man he can manipulate indefinitely. He's about to discover he's facing a systematic legal case built by an engineer who documents everything. The process server would deliver papers to Marcus within hours. 8 years of exploitation was about to meet California's elder protection laws, backed by documentation that would survive any courtroom scrutiny. Patricia's phone buzzed with confirmation from the court clerk. Restraining order hearing scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow. Judge Martinez handles elder abuse cases. She has zero tolerance for financial exploitation of seniors. Dennis left the law office feeling more empowered than he had since Sarah's death. The Villa Fortress had protected his property. The legal fortress would protect his future. The process server found Marcus at his apartment complex parking garage at 4:30 p.m., catching him as he unloaded groceries with the casual confidence of someone who believed his morning's defeat was temporary. The legal papers hit his hands like a physical blow: restraining order, elder abuse, lawsuit, asset freeze petition, and a court hearing scheduled for 9 a.m. the following morning. Dennis received Patricia's text confirmation: papers served. Marcus now has 12 hours to prepare for legal reality. Within an hour, Marcus's Facebook page erupted with desperate damage control. Dennis watched from his villa study as his son-in-law launched a social media campaign designed to paint himself as the victim of a wealthy, unstable father-in-law who had lost touch with family values. My late wife's father has filed a lawsuit against me, Marcus posted, accompanied by a carefully selected photo of himself with Sarah at their wedding. After 8 years of supporting him through grief and isolation, he's chosen money over family. Sarah would be heartbroken to see her father abandon the people who loved her most. The post gained immediate traction among people who didn't know the financial history. Sympathetic comments poured in from Marcus's social circle, expressing outrage at Dennis's apparent cruelty toward a grieving widower. But Patricia had anticipated this exact strategy. Dennis' social media manipulation is Marcus's last weapon, she explained during their evening phone consultation. He's betting that emotional appeals will create public pressure for you to drop the case. Time to show people what systematic documentation looks like. Patricia had spent the afternoon conducting her own digital investigation, screenshotting Marcus's social media history with the thoroughness of a forensic accountant. Instagram posts revealed a lifestyle completely inconsistent with his claims of financial hardship. Look at this timeline, Patricia said, sharing her screen during their video call. March 15th, Marcus posts about needing emergency money for car repairs. March 18th, your bank records show a $12,000 transfer. March 22nd, Marcus posts photos from an expensive seafood restaurant celebrating Jessica's promotion with champagne that costs more per bottle than most people spend on groceries. The pattern was damning when viewed chronologically. Every emergency loan corresponded with luxury purchases documented on social media. Marcus had been living a double life, claiming poverty to Dennis while flaunting wealth online. He forgot that engineers document everything, including his own social media contradictions, Dennis observed with grim satisfaction. Patricia had prepared a comprehensive counter-narrative supported by irrefutable evidence. We're not going to argue with his emotional manipulation. We're going to present facts that speak louder than his tears. Dennis posted his response at 7 p.m., timing it for maximum visibility when people checked social media after dinner. His tone remained professional, factual, and devastating. I've seen concerning posts about our family situation. Here are the documented facts. Over 8 years, I provided $280, 350 inches financial assistance to Marcus Murphy, including emergency loans, educational funding, and living expenses. These transfers were made during my grief over losing my daughter Sarah. Yesterday, Marcus attempted to invade my home with 15 people, demanding 3 weeks of free accommodation without invitation or discussion. When I refused entry and called police, he was cited for trespassing. I am now pursuing legal recovery through proper channels. Dennis attached a carefully selected sample of bank transfer receipts, showing dates, amounts, and Marcus's own email requests, describing various emergencies. The evidence was undeniable and professionally presented. The response was immediate and dramatic. Comments on Marcus's original post shifted from sympathy to shock, as people realized the scope of financial exploitation they had been unaware of. "Wait, you got almost $300,000 from him," one of Marcus's friends commented. "Why didn't you mention that part?" Sarah's college friends who had initially supported Marcus began posting their own clarifications. "I had no idea about the financial assistance. Dennis was incredibly generous during Sarah's illness and after her death. This changes everything." Marcus's social media went silent as the evidence rendered his emotional manipulation powerless. How do you claim poverty when bank records prove nearly $300,000 in support? How do you claim abandonment when you attempted to invade someone's home with 15 uninvited guests? Patricia monitored the digital battlefield with professional satisfaction. Marcus's biggest mistake was forgetting that truth leaves evidence trails. Your systematic documentation just destroyed 8 years of lies in one evening. The community response validated Dennis's position completely. Neighbors who had witnessed the morning's police intervention expressed support. Sarah's genuine friends distinguished themselves from Marcus's enablers by apologizing for initially believing incomplete information. Frank Rodriguez called to report that Marcus had driven past the villa twice, apparently testing the restraining order boundaries. "I documented everything, Dennis. License plate timestamps, GPS location. If he violates that court order, we have evidence." By 10 p.m., Marcus's Facebook page had been deleted entirely. His Instagram account went private. The man who had tried to control the narrative through emotional manipulation had been silenced by systematic evidence and legal consequences. Dennis sat in his study watching the Pacific waves roll endlessly toward shore, feeling the satisfaction of truth defeating lies through proper preparation. Tomorrow's court hearing would be a formality. Patricia had built a case that Marcus couldn't argue against, because every element was documented, verified, and legally sound. Sarah would be proud, Dennis said quietly to her photo on his desk. "Not of the conflict, but of the way I finally learned to protect what we built together." His phone buzzed with a final text from Patricia Court, hearing 9 a.m. sharp. Bring your documentation folder. Judge Martinez has reviewed our filing and called it exemplary preparation for elder abuse prosecution. Marcus is about to learn that systematic exploitation has systematic consequences. The Monterey County Courthouse stood like a temple of justice against the morning sky, its neoclassical columns and granite steps, promising the systematic resolution that Dennis had been building toward for 24 intense hours. At 8:45 a.m., he climbed those steps with Patricia beside him, carrying the comprehensive evidence folder that represented 8 years of systematic documentation meeting California's elder protection laws. Frank Rodriguez had insisted on providing moral support, his retired detective instincts recognizing the importance of this legal moment. 40 years of engineering precision about to meet judicial authority, he observed with professional satisfaction. Marcus picked the wrong opponent. Inside the courthouse, Dennis felt the weight of institutional justice, marble floors worn smooth by decades of legal proceedings, portraits of judges who had upheld the rule of law, the quiet dignity of a system designed to protect citizens, through evidence rather than emotion. Judge Maria Martinez entered her courtroom with the commanding presence of someone who had spent 15 years distinguishing between legal fact and family drama. At 53, she had built her reputation on thorough case review and zero tolerance for elder exploitation, making her the perfect judicial officer for Dennis's situation. Case number 2024CV1847, Collins v. Murphy, the bailiff announced. Petition for restraining order and elder abuse protection. Marcus sat at the defendant's table with a court-appointed attorney, who looked overwhelmed by the evidence Patricia had filed. His expensive designer clothes from yesterday's social media posts had been replaced by a rumpled suit that suggested a sleepless night spent realizing the scope of his legal jeopardy. Miss Williams, Judge Martinez, began consulting her notes with systematic precision. I've reviewed your filing. The documentation level is exceptional for a family dispute case. Patricia stood with professional confidence. Your Honor, this represents systematic financial exploitation of a grieving widower over 8 years. Mr. Collins provided detailed evidence of $280, 350 inches, transfers obtained through emotional manipulation, and false promises of repayment. Judge Martinez examined Dennis's evidence folder with the thoroughness that had made her reputation. Bank statements, transfer receipts, email correspondence, and social media contradictions, all organized with engineering precision and legal thoroughness. Mr. Collins, please explain the pattern of financial assistance to the court. Dennis stood feeling the satisfaction of systematic preparation, meeting official inquiry. Your Honor, beginning 6 months after my daughter's death, Mr. Murphy began requesting financial assistance for various emergencies. Each request included promises of repayment when his business stabilized. Over 8 years, these requests totaled $280, 350 with zero repayment, despite his lifestyle suggesting adequate income. And yesterday's incident, Mr. Murphy called demanding to bring 15 people to my home for a 3-week stay without invitation or discussion. When I refused, he arrived with this group and refused to leave when asked. I activated my security system and called police rather than escalate the situation. Judge Martinez nodded approvingly. Appropriate de-escalation. Mr. Murphy, how do you respond to these allegations? Marcus's attorney attempted a weak defense. Your Honor, my client maintains these were family gifts given during mutual grief. The property incident was a miscommunication about vacation planning. Counselor Judge Martinez replied, holding up screenshots from Patricia's evidence. File your client's social media posts. Contradict claims of financial hardship. Here he documents expensive vacations and luxury purchases immediately following requests for emergency assistance from Mr. Collins. The evidence was undeniable when presented systematically. Marcus's double life claiming poverty while flaunting wealth had been thoroughly documented and professionally presented. Furthermore, Patricia continued California Welfare and Institutions Code 15,610.3 specifically addresses financial abuse of elders. The systematic nature of these requests, combined with emotional manipulation using the deceased daughter's memory, meets the legal definition of elder exploitation. Judge Martinez reviewed the timeline with judicial thoroughness. Mr. Murphy, these bank records show a clear pattern of escalating demands following your wife's death. The amounts involved nearly $300,000, represent substantial exploitation of Mr. Collins's grief and generosity. Marcus made one desperate attempt at emotional manipulation. Your Honor, Dennis is like a father to me. We've been through so much together. This lawsuit is destroying our family. Mr. Murphy Judge Martinez's voice carried judicial finality. Family relationship doesn't justify systematic financial exploitation. The evidence shows you used Mr. Collins's grief over his daughter's death to extract nearly $300,000 while maintaining a lifestyle inconsistent with your claimed financial need. Dennis felt the satisfaction of systematic justice as Judge Martinez rendered her decision. Restraining order granted. Mr. Murphy is prohibited from coming within 500 yards of Mr. Collins or his property. The evidence supports probable cause for elder financial abuse, which I'm referring to the District Attorney's Office for criminal review. Additionally, I'm granting Mr. Collins's petition for asset preservation pending civil resolution. Mr. Murphy's assets are frozen until this court determines appropriate restitution for the documented financial exploitation. The gavel fell with the authority of California's legal system, validating 8 years of systematic preparation. Marcus sat frozen as the reality of legal consequences penetrated his entitled worldview. Outside the courthouse, Patricia shook Dennis's hand with professional pride. Textbook elder abuse prosecution. Judge Martinez called your documentation exemplary preparation that should serve as a model for similar cases. Frank clapped Dennis on the shoulder with the respect of one professional, recognizing another's systematic excellence. You handled that like a true engineer. Identify the problem, gather evidence, implement the solution. Marcus emerged from the courthouse looking defeated, his confident manipulation finally meeting immovable legal authority. He approached Dennis with one final desperate appeal. Dennis, please, we can work this out privately. Family doesn't need lawyers in courts. But Dennis had Frank's professional support, Patricia's legal expertise, and California's elder protection laws backing his position. Marcus' family ended when you chose exploitation over respect. Everything goes through the legal system now. The drive back to Dennis's villa felt like a victory parade with Frank's pickup truck following Patricia's sedan in an informal convoy of professional allies who had helped engineer systematic justice. The coastal highway stretched ahead like a ribbon of vindication, each mile carrying Dennis further from 8 years of exploitation and closer to the protected peace he had earned through careful preparation. Dennis, Patricia called from her car window as they pulled into his driveway. You've set a legal precedent for elder abuse documentation. Judge Martinez wants to use your case as a training example for other seniors facing financial exploitation. The villa's security gates opened smoothly, welcoming Dennis home to property that was now legally protected by California's full authority. The restraining order created a 500-yard buffer zone around his sanctuary, while the asset freeze ensured Marcus would face financial consequences for his systematic manipulation. Frank immediately began organizing neighborhood security, with the efficiency of someone who had spent 30 years protecting communities. I've talked to the Hendersons, the Chens, and the Williamses, he reported, referring to their immediate neighbors. Everyone wants to make sure you feel safe and supported here. Within an hour, Dennis's driveway hosted an impromptu gathering of Monterey Bay residents who had witnessed the morning's police intervention and wanted to express their support. These weren't casual acquaintances offering empty sympathy. These were professional retirees who recognized systematic preparation when they saw it and respected Dennis's methodical approach to protecting himself. We had no idea about the financial exploitation, admitted Carol Henderson, a retired school administrator who lived 3 houses down. When we saw the police yesterday, we thought it was just a family disagreement. Learning about the documentation you maintained, that's impressive professional thinking. Dr. James Chen, a retired physician, offered his perspective with medical precision. Financial abuse of elders is more common than people realize. Your systematic response probably prevented years of additional exploitation. You should feel proud of protecting yourself. The community validation felt profoundly different from Marcus's manipulative attempts at family guilt. These neighbors respected Dennis's boundaries, appreciated his systematic approach, and offered support without expecting anything in return. This was what genuine community looked like, mutual respect rather than exploitation. Frank coordinated a neighborhood watch system with military efficiency. Dennis, we've got visual coverage of all approaches to your property. Carol monitors the north access road. Jim watches the beach approach, and I've got the main coastal highway. Anyone suspicious gets documented and reported. Patricia remained for the afternoon, helping Dennis understand the ongoing legal process with professional thoroughness. The district attorney's office will likely file criminal charges within 30 days. Your documentation provides everything they need for elder abuse prosecution. Meanwhile, the civil case will proceed toward full restitution of the $280 $350. As afternoon turned to evening, Dennis realized something remarkable was happening. Sarah's genuine friends were distinguishing themselves from Marcus's enablers through their responses to the legal victory. The people who had truly known and loved his daughter were expressing relief that he had finally protected himself. Margaret Walsh, Sarah's college roommate, called to apologize for initially believing Marcus's social media manipulation. "Dennis, I'm so sorry I questioned your character. Sarah always said you were the most systematic, careful person she knew. I should have realized Marcus was manipulating the situation." "Sarah used to worry that you were too generous for your own good," added Jennifer Torres, another of Sarah's close friends. "She would be proud that you finally learned to protect what you built together." These conversations revealed something Dennis hadn't fully understood. Sarah's real friends had always seen through Marcus's manipulation, but hadn't known how to address it without causing family conflict. The legal victory had given them permission to express their true feelings about the systematic exploitation they had witnessed. Frank installed additional security cameras with professional precision, creating a comprehensive monitoring system that would document any future harassment attempts. Marcus is legally prohibited from coming here, but desperate people sometimes make stupid decisions. We'll be ready if he tries anything. The enhanced security wasn't paranoia, it was systematic preparation for the possibility that legal consequences might drive Marcus to escalate his behavior. Dennis appreciated Frank's law enforcement perspective on protecting vulnerable citizens through proper precautions. As evening approached, Dennis stood on his deck, watching the Pacific waves roll endlessly toward shore, but now he wasn't alone with his thoughts. Frank sat in the adjacent chair, sharing comfortable conversation about retirement challenges and professional satisfaction. Patricia had left comprehensive legal documentation ensuring his ongoing protection. "You know what impresses me most about this whole situation," Frank observed, sipping the coffee Dennis had prepared. "You never lost your dignity. Could have gotten angry, could have fought dirty, could have used emotional manipulation right back at Marcus. Instead, you used systematic preparation and legal process. That takes real character. The community support felt sustainable in a way that Marcus's demands never had. These relationships were built on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine appreciation for Dennis's systematic approach to life. No one expected unlimited financial assistance or demanded access to his property without invitation. Dennis's phone buzzed with a text from Patricia DA's office confirmed their proceeding with elder abuse charges. "Your documentation convinced them this case has strong prosecution potential. Justice continues to work systematically." Looking across his protected property toward the endless Pacific, Dennis felt something he hadn't experienced since Sarah's death: complete security in his own space, surrounded by people who respected his boundaries and appreciated his systematic approach to protecting what he had earned. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, ongoing legal proceedings, and the continued process of building genuine relationships based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. But tonight, his villa was truly the sanctuary it was designed to be. 3 weeks later, Dennis Collins sat on his villa deck watching the sunset paint Monterey Bay in shades of gold and crimson, the same view that had been interrupted by Marcus's arrogant phone call but now protected by legal boundaries and community support. The Pacific stretched endlessly toward the horizon, its waves carrying away the debris of conflict and leaving clean sand for tomorrow's possibilities. The restraining order had held perfectly. Marcus had made no attempts to violate the 500-yard boundary, apparently understanding that systematic legal consequences awaited any further harassment. The district attorney's office had filed elder abuse charges, with Patricia reporting that Dennis's documentation provided the strongest evidence foundation they had seen in years. Frank Rodriguez emerged from his own property with 2 cups of coffee, a daily ritual that had developed naturally over the past weeks. At 64, Frank moved with the comfortable confidence of someone who had found genuine friendship in retirement, built on mutual respect rather than exploitation. "Any word from Patricia about the restitution timeline?" Frank asked, settling into the chair that had become his regular spot during their evening conversations. "She expects the first payment within 60 days, Dennis replied, accepting the coffee with appreciation for this simple gesture of friendship. The asset freeze convinced Marcus's attorney that negotiation was preferable to prolonged litigation. He'll pay back $150,000 over 3 years. Not the full amount, but substantial justice, Frank observed with professional satisfaction. More importantly, the legal precedent protects other seniors from similar exploitation. Dennis nodded, understanding that the financial recovery was secondary to the boundary protection he had established. The villa's security system monitored approaches with electronic precision, but the real security came from legal documentation and community support that made future exploitation impossible. Sarah's photo smiled from the side table, no longer a weapon for manipulation, but a source of genuine guidance. Dennis had finally learned to distinguish between honoring his daughter's memory and enabling her husband's exploitation. The difference was profound and liberating. "You know what Sarah would think about all this," Dennis said, quietly touching the silver frame with gentle fingers. "She'd be proud that I finally learned to protect what we built together, not just give it away to anyone who claimed family connection." Margaret Walsh had called earlier to report that Marcus had moved out of state, apparently seeking fresh opportunities for manipulation elsewhere. "Good riddance," she had said with uncharacteristic bluntness. "Sarah always worried that you were too generous for your own good. She'd be relieved to see you standing up for yourself." The conversation had crystallized something Dennis was still processing. His daughter's real friends had always seen through Marcus's manipulation but hadn't known how to address it without causing family conflict. The legal victory had given them permission to express their true feelings about the systematic exploitation they had witnessed. Dr. Chen from down the street had stopped by earlier to share news that 3 other neighborhood seniors had contacted Patricia about potential financial exploitation by family members. "Your systematic approach is inspiring people to document their own situations," he had reported with medical precision. "You've probably prevented thousands of dollars in additional elder abuse." Dennis felt the satisfaction of systematic preparation, creating broader social benefit. Engineering had taught him that well-designed solutions often solve problems beyond their original scope, and his documentation system was now helping protect other vulnerable seniors. The villa itself had become everything Dennis had dreamed. When he purchased it, a sanctuary where he could enjoy the fruits of 40 years' careful work without interference or exploitation. The infinity pool reflected the evening sky. The imported limestone deck felt solid beneath his feet, and the floor-to-ceiling windows framed views that belonged to him alone. Frank's friendship had grown into the kind of relationship Dennis hadn't experienced since his engineering colleagues retired. Built on mutual respect, shared professional values, and genuine appreciation for systematic thinking, it represented what family relationships should be: supportive without being exploitative, caring without being demanding. "I've been thinking about something," Dennis said, watching seagulls dance above the waves. "For 8 years I thought being generous meant saying yes to every request, absorbing every crisis, writing every check. But real generosity requires wisdom to remain sustainable." "Boundaries protect generosity," Frank agreed, with the insight of someone who had spent decades protecting communities. Without limits, kindness becomes enabling, and enabling destroys the very relationships it's supposed to preserve. Patricia's legal expertise had provided ongoing security through proper documentation and systematic protection. The restraining order created physical boundaries, the asset freeze ensured financial accountability, and the elder abuse prosecution established legal precedent that would deter future exploitation attempts. But the most important protection was internal: Dennis's newfound ability to distinguish between genuine family relationships and manipulative exploitation. Sarah's memory now guided him toward wisdom, rather than unlimited giving, toward protecting what they had built, rather than surrendering it to anyone who claimed family connection. The Pacific waves rolled endlessly toward shore, each cycle washing the beach clean and preparing fresh sand for tomorrow's possibilities. Dennis felt the same cleansing process within himself. 8 years of exploitation washed away by systematic legal action, leaving space for genuine relationships built on mutual respect. His phone buzzed with a text from Patricia: "Criminal trial date set for next month. Your documentation will ensure conviction. Civil restitution payments begin in 30 days. Justice continues working systematically." Dennis smiled, appreciating how systematic preparation had created sustainable justice. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: ongoing legal proceedings and the continued process of building genuine relationships. But tonight his villa was exactly what he had dreamed: a sanctuary earned through 40 years of careful work and protected through systematic boundary enforcement. Sarah would approve, he said quietly to her photo as the last light faded over Monterey Bay. Not of the conflict, but of the wisdom I finally learned. Generosity, without boundaries, isn't love, it's enabling. Real love protects what matters most. The evening stars appeared above the Pacific, infinite and enduring, like the peace Dennis had finally earned through systematic preparation, legal protection, and the wisdom to distinguish between family and exploitation. Sometimes the greatest victories aren't won through anger or revenge, but through the quiet strength of systematic preparation and unwavering boundaries. Dennis Collins learned that true generosity requires wisdom to remain sustainable, and that protecting what you've earned isn't selfishness, it's self-respect. His 40 years of engineering precision had taught him to build bridges, but his greatest construction project was building boundaries strong enough to preserve the sanctuary he'd spent a lifetime creating. In a world where family obligations can become family exploitation, Dennis discovered that love without limits isn't love at all, it's enabling. The Pacific waves continue to wash Monterey Bay clean each day, just as systematic justice washed away 8 years of manipulation, leaving space for genuine relationships built on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. For every person who has ever felt guilty for saying no to family demands, Dennis's story proves that protecting your peace isn't abandoning your principles, it's honoring them. The villa stands secure, the boundaries hold strong, and the earned peace continues one systematic day at a time.